This is Blue Left, a podcast dedicated to amplifying the underrepresented Democratic voices in Tennessee, working tirelessly to bring progressive change to the volunteer state. Here's your host, Peggy Kingsbury.
That's right. We're back with the Blue Lift, and I'm glad to have all of you back here with me today. We have an exciting guest, as always. We only have the best guest here. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Megan Barry, a former mayor of Nashville, and we're going to talk about a book Megan has out. It's turned into a bestseller, by the way. It's called It's What You Do Next. And so, listeners, what you do next is go and order a copy of this book. That is what you do next. Megan was born in California, raised in Kansas. She has a Bachelor of Science degree from Baker University and an MBA from Vanderbilt. So, Megan did your time at Vanderbilt, and you just came and you stayed and never left. Is that what happened?
Yeah, Peggy, I think that's a pretty common story for people who come to Nashville and to Tennessee. They come seeking education, and my own story was I was going to stay here 18 months, and 32 years later, here I am.
Here you are.
Here.
Did you meet your husband Bruce when you were in college at Vandy?
I did. I did when I was getting my MBA.
Okay, That's interesting. And I know after you got your MBA, you spent a long time in the business world doing various things.
I did. I was really lucky. I had lots of different shifts in my career, but always the thread was always with ethics and compliance. I did it in telecommunications. I did it in healthcare. And I had a great opportunity to go and actually see the world by working for two great companies.
Oh, wow. Interesting. And then I guess everyone who is in the know knows that then you became the mayor of Nashville. But I know before that you were a city council member. That's not what they call it. What? Metro?
Yeah, we call it a council member. I mean, because we're Metro Nashville as a combined county city government, so we're a metropolitan government, so we're Metro Council members. So there are 40.
Yeah, I knew there was a big group. 40's a lot. So you had your great career going. What made you decide to get into politics? Because it's not a fun thing to be in, as you know.
It didn't used to be so unfun.
True.
It used to be a lot more fun. I think I got in it like a lot of people do, which is kind of by accident. It was never my vision, especially for women. Women, it's gotten a lot better, but there used to be this, the Gallup poll used to do like some kind of research that showed that when women were asked if they would ever run for office, almost universally they said no. And when men would be asked if they would ever run for office, they were like, sure, I totally got this.
Oh, that's funny.
Kind of fell into it by accident. I started with my neighborhood association, and I started with my child's PTO. And I think, that was my avenue into local politics. And at the time, there was a school in Nashville that they wanted to tear down. And so it got a lot of people excited. And you really could see what having a local presence and local voices could do for an outcome. And that was really exciting. And so I thought, well, you know what? This is great. And I worked for a company actually that said, if you want to run for office, it's a nonpartisan office, then that can be your community service. And so I had a very supportive company that said, sure, we encourage that. We like civic engagement. So I was able to run for Metro Council at large. I served on that for 8 years. And then, as you mentioned, after that, I ran and was the first woman elected to be the mayor of Nashville.
That's great. And I know that when you ran for mayor, there may have been women who'd run before. Were there women who had ever run before?
Yeah. So, Betty Nixon ran, and I don't know if that's a name that your listeners remember or know, but she was an amazing icon in Nashville. And she and I had a similar trajectory. She had been on the Metro Council. She'd gotten her MBA from Vanderbilt. She ran for mayor at the time. She ran against Bryson. She ran against Bryson. And that was the first kind of, I think, head-to-head between, a woman and a man in Nashville. So, it was fun.
Yeah, and I know that you were not you were not slated to win. No one thought you would win, and yet you did.
I love those surprises. If only that had happened in November.
Yeah. Well, yes, yeah, that was a time. I mean, obviously, you should have won. But you did become mayor of Nashville, and I really want to talk to you about a lot of things in the book. But I also don't want to dwell on the things that will just waste our time here, because your book really speaks a lot about the opioid epidemic and what that does to families and people, and you lost your son to that epidemic. So I really want us to talk a lot about that. But I want to read just a little something from the readers, for the listeners, from your book. In the beginning of the book, Megan writes, "I'm not writing this book for absolution. By the grace of God, my family, my friends, and myself, I have that. I'm writing because at some point, all of us will be at our worst. Some of us will be remembered for it, but none of us should be defined by it. It's what you do next that counts." And that is so powerful. Many of the listeners will know your story as mayor. You were serving and doing well, and then you got embroiled in a scandal. And I'll just read you a few of the headlines in case there's a listener who doesn't know what happened. Megan Barry resigns as Nashville mayor weeks after admitting affair with her security chief. Megan Barry, Nashville mayor, pleads guilty to theft and agrees to resign. So those are the I guess the highest points we need to go to about what happened. I do love in the book that you explain the guilty to theft charges and your agreement to plead to that, because I think it's important that we know how that went and what that was with the legal system. It's not like Megan Barry ever stole money from anybody. You didn't put a dime in your pocket, So with all that said, what I really want to talk about more than all of that, and I will say this, though. I do appreciate your complete honesty in this book. My goodness, you just lay it out there. This is what happened. You give some personal information about why it may have happened and all of that. So if someone's looking for just a really good book to read and you like to have a little spice in it, we'll get this book. If you want to learn about a woman who runs for office and wins and is dealing now basically in a man's world, well, this is the book for you. If you want to learn about a personal story of a family dealing with a son's addiction, then this book is for you. So there's just a lot in here that speaks to you in many different ways. So your son, Max, what year did he pass away, Megan?
So Max passed away in 2017. He was 22.
Okay. Whenever I have an opportunity to talk to a parent who's been through something like that, I'm always a little bit curious as to when you might have had some inclination that your child was really in trouble, and what advice can you give parents about that?
Yeah, that is the thing. I think that for Max, Max, his journey towards substance use disorder started in what I'm thinking college, when he was a junior in college. And Max had a type A mom, me, who was always busting his chops about whether he had an internship, what he was going to do after graduation, all this stuff. And, Max had anxiety. And I think a lot of that's not an uncommon thing in our youth today. So for Max, he found a prescriber. And I'd like to think it was a medical professional, but I honestly don't know. But he got a hold of Xanax. And so he started taking Xanax. And we could tell almost immediately in his voice. And he was at school up at University of in Washington State, at the University of Puget Sound. So, we didn't have eyes on him, but we could hear in his voice that there was something amiss. And, we were really lucky because we were able to get him on a plane. We got him home. And I took him to the emergency room. And I got to see at that moment what the shame and guilt does as part of this disease. Because I believe that substance use disorder is a disease. And I also believe it's totally treatable. It's a chronic condition that you have to manage the rest of your life. But I didn't know any of that then. So when we got him home, I took him to the emergency room at Vanderbilt, and they took Max back. And the doctor came out and said, "Look, I can't tell you anything that's going on because Max won't sign the form because he was over 18." And so because of that, we had no information. And I have to tell you, Max's shame and guilt was the most dangerous thing in that treatment room that night because he was ashamed of what he was going through. And so, the doctor came out and said, "Hey, look, I can't tell you anything. All I can say is that after tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., whatever's in Max's system is going to clear, and you need to come back and get him and deal with it." And he didn't hand me a pamphlet. He didn't hand me a resource. Nothing.
Wow.
So I went home and started Googling, and I think it's important to remember, like, for the listeners, for perspective, like, I'm the mayor of Nashville at this point. And I don't call anybody. I don't call my mom, my dad, my sisters, Max's pediatrician, a friend. Why? Because I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that Max might be a drug addict. Well, I did know we were dealing with something. So when I picked him up the next morning, we were lucky because we had three things. Max was willing to go to rehab. He was willing. We could find a bed that was available, and we had insurance to pay for it. And those three things don't happen for most families.
Oh, wow.
So,
and it's rare that all three happen for any family, really. Yeah, I mean, because you could have a kid who's willing to go, but they can't find a bed or they don't have a way to pay for it.
That's right. And that's a pretty common occurrence because beds are scarce and they're expensive. Which is another whole conversation about how, if we're actually going to get our arms around all of this, we've got to come up with ways that help treat folks with substance use disorder, and you have to be expansive in that. And it's got to be inpatient, outpatient, medically assisted treatment, 12-step programs. I mean, you don't treat cancer all the same. You don't treat somebody who's got substance use all the same. You got to figure out the way that's going to be best for them.
So let me ask you this, as someone who's lived through it and also looked at it in a way that looks at maybe what policies might work and whatnot. Why do you think as a country we're so reluctant to give this the attention it deserves?
Because we still treat it as a moral failure. We think that people who have substance use disorder have brought it on themselves. We believe that they are in control of it, that they can just stop, even though the research and the science absolutely says that if you have gone down this path, you absolutely have changed your brain chemistry in ways that now need significant intervention in order to become healthy again. We treat, again, this idea of moral failure. We treat people with heart conditions who maybe haven't had the best diet or exercise in their life. We don't judge them. We actually get them the help that they need. And that's the same with people who are experiencing substance use disorder. We have to find ways to treat them as somebody who is in trouble, who needs assistance, mental, physical, instead of just kind of doing they brought it on themselves and it's their fault.
Right. Oh, that's an interesting point. I had not thought about it in that perspective. Do you feel like we also treat mental illness the same way? It's sort of like they need to stop being depressed. What's wrong with them?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, look, I'm not a physician, and I would say, I know that Max had anxiety. And there are lots of ways to treat anxiety. And my first hope wouldn't have been to put my child on a really dangerously addictive drug as a 22-year-old or 21-year-old boy who is not at home, is not being monitored in any meaningful way, instead of helping him create tools in his life that might have helped him with his anxiety. So I'm not, I don't think we always have to, to treat everything with a drug. But there are drugs that can help even in the process of helping treat people who have substance use disorder.
Right.
It's all individual, right? It's like, and mental health is individual too.
And we just really seem, for some reason, as a country, to not want to put any money into mental health. And I've always thought that our public schools, which of course is another thing that we deal with here in Tennessee, of whether we are even going to have public schools, but I've always thought that public schools should be a wonderful way to have medical professionals there who can see kids who are beginning to need some mental health support in one way or the other to deal with things.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you. Go ahead. I want to ask you about. Marijuana. And I know in the book you mentioned that you suspected that Max was using marijuana. What are your thoughts on the legalization of marijuana?
So, I do talk about this in the book. I talk about that. Yeah, Max definitely used, smoked pot. In fact, I would tell you that the reason he chose the University of Puget Sound in Washington State is because Washington State was a place where he could legally smoke. And there are lots of states like that. Tennessee is not one of them. But again, I go back to there are plenty of reasons why people should be accorded the availability of marijuana as something that they should, there's medical applications. There's a lot of research that shows that our veterans who experience all kinds of PSTD can benefit from this. So, I don't think it should be illegal. And I also don't think it's a gateway drug. I don't think that Max's marijuana smoking led to him becoming addicted to Xanax. I think there was a whole lot of other stuff that was going on. I know so many people who smoke marijuana who it's like a glass of wine. It doesn't lead them on to more.
Right.
However, everybody's different. So, and there is research that shows if your kids start smoking marijuana at a really early age, that can have an impact on their brain. And anytime we're talking about brain health, I think you want to be really cautious about the stuff that you're putting in your body, because it does and can fundamentally change your brain chemistry in ways that can create mental health issues.
Well, and I think it's, when I think about marijuana, I think too, it's similar with alcohol, but we don't seem to be wanting to outlaw alcohol, I mean, I know that, some people don't have a problem with their underage children drinking. And I can tell you as a former cop, I would much rather deal with someone who's on marijuana than someone who's drunk, because, I was an officer in Athens, Georgia, and give me, some frat boys on weed over drunken frat boys every day. Every single day. Right. And I know.
I think you've made a really interesting point, which is, what we're talking about is legal things that adults can make decisions about to ingest, never in support of things for underage or minors, doing, underage drinking or marijuana or anything else. This is about what adults should be able to do.
Right. In the book, one of the episodes I thought was pretty interesting is when Max has come home. There was the episode of he was to make an appearance at the Sounds game, and that did not go very well. And you wound up with him in the emergency room. And then when he comes out, he's decided that he's willing to go to rehab, but there's some discussion about where he's going to go. And he makes a different decision than he originally had said. And so when I'm reading that, I'm thinking, wow, this is really, his addiction is driving the ship at this point.
Yeah. And the rehab that he went to ultimately we're now for 7 years past, or 8 years past when Max went to rehab. And so thankfully the rehab industry has gotten a little tighter, a little better. It's still pretty fraught though with, some actors that maybe aren't the best. But this place where Max went at the time, Florida, it has a huge rehab industry that, because of a lot of the lax laws, again, a little of this has changed. But I'm pretty sure, in fact, I know that the place that Max ended up was a guy who'd been in the concrete business who like bought up all these old motels in Florida and was just running rehab out of them. And, but again, we didn't know any of this because we didn't really know or understand that there were good actors and bad actors. And had the doctor or anybody else who was a medical professional said to me, look, here are the resources that you need. These are the things like that he would have done if like Max had cancer. We would have like been at the, oh my gosh, like where's the best place to get Max treated for cancer? Like how do we get this under control? And the reason I know that this particular outfit that Max went to is no longer in business is we actually got a letter recently from a bankruptcy lawyer saying, hey, we have all of Max's medical records as part of the bankruptcy because this place no longer exists. Would you like them? And of course, even in Max's death, we can't access them because he never signed this stupid form.
Oh, wow. So you can't get those. Oh, wow.
No.
I know you would really like to.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been informative, and the other thing, which is kind of super crazy, which your listeners can pay attention to this or not, but Max was 22. He didn't have a will, so what 22-year-old boy does have,
right?
So he, and Max had some bank accounts that we didn't have our name on. He was starting to build his own credit and stuff. So we had one account in one bank that, they were like, well, it's like $500 and you can go to court, you can hire a lawyer, go to court, probate this, and it will cost you way more than $500. Or you can just like let the balance winnow down, like every month they'll just take, whatever the charge would be out of it. And then eventually they'll close it. But that took 6 years.
Wow.
And we get a statement. And I have to tell you, the beginning of grief, I'm obviously further along on my journey, but the beginning of grief, every time that we would get one of these things, I would be bananas because we had talked to the bank, we had told the bank, we had expressed to the bank that Max was dead, and we did not want to receive this stuff anymore. And every time that intrusion popped into my mailbox, I would blow a gasket.
Wow.
Because I tried everything I could. That and trying to get Microsoft to turn off his Xbox that I would get like billed for every year because he had an annual subscription, short of canceling my own credit card that it was tied to. And then they still found me again.
Oh my goodness.
Last year, I finally got somebody at Microsoft to turn it.
Oh my goodness. Well, and that is an important thing that you bring up because I think we don't think about that, is that, if you are a young person or have a kid who's a young person and they've graduated from college and they're beginning to start their life and they're not married, they really should pay attention to that and make sure that someone else is named on all of their stuff. I mean, they could become disabled and need someone to make their car payment, for example.
Exactly. And, we had some accounts that Max was on, but like for him to start to build his own stuff, we had taken our names off. Anyway, it's just crazy paperwork. It's more just the banality of death, which is the stuff that you don't even think about. Now, occasionally, I just last week, I talk in the book about the letters that we received after Max died, and
yes.
and we got nasty ones too. And I talk a little bit about that. But I got a nasty one the day of the election, which I hadn't gotten in a long time. And but just to balance it off, I also got something that day in the mail addressed to Max, which doesn't hardly happen anymore at all. And so it made me laugh. It was like, okay, this is Max coming into my mailbox at the same time I'm getting this nasty gram to say, Mom, just don't even worry about this stuff anymore.
That is, that just amazes me that some human being has the time and the desire, after all this much time has passed, to still send you a nasty letter. Like, what do they think the end game to that is?
Yeah, so I think, and this has helped me a lot, that it's not about me.
No, not at all.
I'm sorry that I'm taking up even an inch of headspace in their head. I wish them only grace, and I hope that they can move past it, because whatever this is, it's not about me anymore.
No. And as the book moves along, I see a lot of progression in you and how you view these things. When you wrote the book, was it hard to go back and relive some of the things that happened and then figure out a way to speak to that?
Yeah, so this book, this started back during COVID. I think a lot of folks had a lot of time, and this would have been 2020. So, and I had done a little bit before, because I'm not a journaler. I didn't take detailed notes. I don't have, I didn't have all this stuff. Somebody gave me a compliment the other day. They said, "Oh my gosh, you're an author." I said, "No, I just wrote one book." So anyway,
you're an author.
Which was sweet. But I decided during COVID that I did want to explore a little bit of my creativity. So I took a class through Gotham, which is a organization based out of New York that went online during COVID. So I would be able to take a class. It was 10 weeks. I had, friends, colleagues in the Zoom world, who every Wednesday, from 7 to 10, we would be together. And it was great. And it was memoir one. So I started writing memoir one, and that was really nice. And my intent was just to kind of put this stuff on paper. I didn't think I actually ever thought beyond that. And then I took memoir two, and then I went back and took memoir one again, because I felt like in memoir two, I missed a lot. And my husband throughout this whole process was always, he would read my stuff and he would tell me what he thought and stuff. And at one point, I say this in the book, I say, Bruce, in the author's note, I say, Bruce says to me, apparently the first casualty of memoir is truth. And I said, well, I'm truth. This is how I remember things. And he said, well, I kind of remember them a little different, but, this is, your truth. And so after he had said that to me, I thought, well, maybe I should write fiction. So I took a fiction class. And the people who write fiction are amazing, because they really do have to create something out of whole cloth in their minds. And we would be given a prompt in class, like, you're meeting somebody on a train, and, make that happen. And my colleagues would go off and write these elaborate stories, like in 10 minutes. And I would come back with, like, me and Bruce sitting on the train, having a conversation. And so I'm like, maybe fiction isn't where I should go. And then I would show, some of the stuff I would show to Bruce, and he would be like, yeah. I said, I don't think it's fiction if you just change your names. It's like, it's still memoir. So I went back to the memoir part, and it was never again my intent, but as I kept writing, and it definitely changed over time, right? I wrote a lot more, but the final copy of the book, I think, has 236 pages. So you have to winnow down what you leave in. And, they call them your darlings. It was a phrase I didn't know until I took a writing class. And your darlings are the things that you particularly love and want and have in there. And you hire, or you are lucky to have an editor who, when you actually get to the point of publishing a book, who goes through and says, no. And you're like, no, but it's like, it's so important. And they're like, yeah, it's not. So there was stuff that definitely came out that I had in there. Because ultimately, even though, it's my story, it's also, I wanted it to be a good read. I wanted the reader to be able to come along with me on this ride and be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, she's gonna, oh shoot, she did.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah, there were a few moments of that where I'm like, don't do it. And then I was thinking, it is what you do next. What you do next is going to determine things.
Yeah. And so, in order to keep the story moving and kind of like, not get too bogged down and stuff, like, I think I had a lot more stuff in there about my time in office, they're like, yeah.
Well, but that's the people like me who are real interested in politics, that I would probably find all of that interesting. And I did want to ask you about one of the things that happened when you were in office, or actually I think it culminated after you were out of office, is this whole transportation bill. And the way I remember it from being completely on the outside, not even living in the county really, that it was going to affect that much, is all of a sudden big money from out of the state got all wrapped up in that. What was that all about? What was their purpose?
Yeah, so at the time, and this was the Koch brothers, Americans for Prosperity, this was back in 2017, 18. And lots of cities were starting to get more serious about implementing and passing transit. And the Koch brothers, they didn't like it. And we were one of those cities, and we were the recipient of absolutely a targeted campaign to tank transit in this initiative. And, hey, I didn't help either because I was the face of the transit thing. So when I left office under a scandal, there was a whole, could voters actually vote for this? If it had only lost by a couple of points, I would tell you that I own all of it. But it didn't pass. I mean, it went down in flames, like by a big margin. And that was because of a lot of the outside money that had come in. Which is, I still, that is one of my biggest sadnesses that didn't happen, because we would be 8 years along on a very good transit plan.
Oh, I know. I'd be taking light rail downtown. So why do the Koch brothers care whether or not Nashville has transit?
Well, Americans for Prosperity, first of all, are not crazy about cities anyway. And then I think you throw in all the way they've made their money is oil. So, I guess they're not keen on anything that doesn't have a combustion engine or doesn't have a lot of people riding. And it's funny, Peggy, because you said I was watching from afar, but one of the best parts about this was this idea that the transit, yes, was going to start in Nashville, but all of Middle Tennessee, the mayors and the folks were very clear that once we could get it to a county line, they would connect. And that was so exciting. I mean, no county, Williamson County isn't going to build a transit line in the hope someday that Davidson County is going to build one.
Right.
They're going to wait for Davidson County. Williamson's going to connect and Robertson's going to connect. And so that was also the really sad part about the fact that, we couldn't then get it to a county line so that we could make this a regional transit system.
Right. I do think it's set us back a number of years. So you have to live through the scandal. You live through losing your son. And then, I won't reveal everything is in the book because people need to buy it and read it. But you go through a period of trying to figure things out, and you and Bruce begin to work things out. And some years pass, and then you decide you're going to get back into politics. Now, Megan,
Right.
You knew probably what was going to be thrown at you, although it was done less so than we might think. When you first said to Bruce, I think I'm going to run for office again, did he look at you and say, you've lost your mind?
Well, thankfully he did not. He said to me, you love it and you're good at it and you should totally do it. And so we hopped in the car. This was, I ran for District 7 in Tennessee, that is 14 counties, goes from the Kentucky border to the Alabama border, because that's gerrymandering at its finest. And we hopped in the car and drove it. And it took us 10 and a half hours. And we went through the rural parts, and we were just like, wow, these folks really, they deserve representation. And wouldn't it be great if at a minimum, you could just connect with them during this process and then win and help them. And so anyway, that was, gosh, today's the 5th. So it was like a year ago around this time that I announced and got in. And yeah, there was some concern. Obviously I left office in a scandal. I'm just going to say this, though. It's become, and look, I own everything I did, so I'm not trying to minimize this, but political scandal anymore, mine seems like kind of just like nothing.
That is so true.
And I don't mean like it was something, it was huge, and it was very bad, and nobody should have done any of the stuff I did. I just think that now the tolerance for political scandal, look who we just elected.
Exactly. When I read the book, that obviously I was thinking, wow, if this were to happen today, it would just be a non-issue, basically. But
that doesn't make it right.
No.
Again, and so, because I do get that sometimes, and it is true. Like people say, look, if you had been a guy, you would have been treated so differently, and that's probably true. But it doesn't make it right, and so it doesn't mean that a guy shouldn't also be held accountable. It just means that I got held to a different standard.
Right. Oh, and I definitely believe that's true. But reading about your past work before politics, you were used to, as a woman, having to deal with things that men might not have to deal with in the workplace. And I know you had a high level position, and so both of us have lived through a lot of that anyway. And some of the things that we tolerated when we were getting started in the working world, we would not have to tolerate today. Yeah. Something that you walk. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Peggy, I'm guessing with your background that you walked into plenty of spaces where you were the only woman. And that was and people either didn't modify their behavior or became even more outrageous.
Oh, yes. As you can imagine, when I became a police officer, I remember I went to get my uniforms, and we had to go to this uniform shop, and they didn't have any women's pants. And the man at the uniform shop looks at me and he said, well, we've never had hips in here that look like that. And so I had to have a lot of alteration done on my uniform. But there's been a lot of things. I could probably write a book about all this ridiculousness. In your book, you say something that really struck me. It might be a sentence that no one else is really going to pick up on, but I did, and I want to talk about it. This is where you've gone to visit with your sister, and I think you're doing some fishing and whatnot. And you're reminiscing about things, and you say, I lost myself. I wonder if the cost of a great leader is a good human. If it is, the cost is too great. Wow. Do you think the cost of a great leader may be a good human in the world we're in today?
I kind of think that based on the people who are in leadership, and I wouldn't even put the word great now in front of them, that I would say that the people who have become our leaders aren't great humans.
And I agree. And I wonder, it seems like the amount of time it takes for a good human who becomes a leader to become a bad human happens very fast now, where I think before it used to take a long time for some of that to settle in. But now, and so I just wonder, good people are not very often interested in going into politics, are they?
No. And I think that's going to be to our detriment here not only in Tennessee, but also on the national stage, that, we as Democrats, because I'm a Democrat, and I believe that we need to make sure that we're putting people in. We should run people. Like that's the way that you actually get back power, is to have people, but you also want people who are decent humans. And I think for the most part, we've had that in Tennessee, and nationally. But I worry that we're going to lose that pipeline, because people are going to say, you know what, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it to my family. It's not worth it to my health, my mental capabilities, my financial, whatever it is, that they're just that pipeline's going to dry up. And that worries me.
So looking ahead, in the last election round that we had here in Tennessee, which is not that different than a lot of other supermajority states, we really didn't move the bar very much. What is it going to take, in your opinion, with all your experience? What are we going to do now, Megan?
The thing is, you can't stop, and we didn't move, but we nudged it a little bit. And what happened at the national level absolutely had an impact here. And that's where we're going to have a different chance in 2026. You've got off presidential year election. You've got oftentimes the party in power loses seats in a 2020, the next round. So those might be national things that might help a little bit. But I will tell you, the one thing that is going to help Tennessee that is actually putting investment and resources from the nationals into Tennessee, because we are a cheap date. Like, look, what was it? $27 million that went into Pennsylvania for one of these races. You could have taken one of those millions of dollars. And if you put that into this race, in my race, I'm not saying we would have won, but we might have moved the needle a little further and a little further. And that's what you see happening in places like North Carolina and Georgia. They are moving it. The other part is, if we continue to be a beacon for folks who are super conservative to move to this state, it's just going to get hard. What you saw in Georgia and North Carolina is their populations are different, and we don't have that.
Right. I agree. And I don't want to get too in the weeds, because a lot of my listeners are not here in Tennessee, but many are. I would say most are. When we talk about the National Democratic Party paying a little more attention to us, I believe that comes from the strength of our state party. And I know we're getting ready to go through some changes in the state party. What are your thoughts on about what we as progressive Tennesseans should ask of our state Democratic Party?
I think that's exactly right. I think, we go through this cycle every 2 years, and we're getting ready to interview and I guess vote on a new chair. And the way our model is you've got a chairman and an executive director, and the chair is elected by a small group of folks across the state who are the executive committee members. And I think those executive committee members should be looking for somebody who actually wants to have relationships, raise money, and who can do it, like, that can be their entire focus, right? Like, because I think that the party deserves people who are, that's their thing. And I know we've got some folks who are thinking about it, who are current state legislators. They're great people. I worry that being in the state legislature will take up a lot of your time. So, having somebody who's not distracted like that might be a better option for us. I guess we'll know over the next several weeks who the final folks are for the slate to be considered. And Peggy, remind me, are you an executive committee member?
No. But we have. So Williamson County, for those who don't know, we are our own division. Some of the executive committee members represent several counties, but here in Williamson County, we're all just one package. So I do know someone who has political savvy, who now has some time on her hands. Is that something you might be interested in doing?
Oh, you're talking to me?
Yes.
No, but I will help whomever is, who takes this on, because I believe in the party, and I believe that we can do it this. And this isn't just about one cycle. And I kept saying that on the campaign trail. It is about 26, 28, and 30, and it's about building. One of the best parts of my campaign that I was so honored was that I got to meet and know the committee, the county chairs, of which you are for Williamson County, and like the counties are doing such great work. They need more resources. They need more energy. They need more excitement, but that comes with money. And so, giving them money is not a waste. It's an investment, and we have to find ways to keep investing in those county parties.
Right. I agree, and I also spend some mental energy thinking about our messaging as Democrats, not just in Tennessee, but nationally as well. And I think we spend a lot of time in Tennessee striking out against the ridiculousness that comes from our legislature. And I'm hoping that we can, obviously we have to do some of that, but I'm hoping that we can also move to a place where we begin to educate the public about what a Tennessee Democrat really is. We're a group of people who care about fairness and equity, and all of these other flashy issues are, they're just there for noise. We just want everyone to have a chance at a good life here in the state of Tennessee. And I think a lot of the things that as individuals that we want for ourselves and our families, those things are across the board, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. And somehow we lost our way in our messaging, and we're now just reactionary. And I would like us to turn the corner somehow on that.
As a county party chair, I look to you to help drive that messaging, because you're close to your constituency, and you know what's important. I mean, I think that we oftentimes don't have that connection back. I mean, clearly this election showed us that people care about the economy. How did we not know that?
Right.
I mean, and when the state house and the state senate take their seats in January in Tennessee, the one thing that I think Democrats can really get behind and help is with getting rid of the grocery tax. I mean, come on.
I would love to see us get rid of the grocery tax. And that speaks to the issues that voters told us were important to them in this last election. Yeah. So,
and
go ahead.
That's exactly.
So when we talk about your journey and your path, and the title of your book is It's What You Do Next, what does Megan Berry do next?
She gets out some Christmas decorations. She puts them up. I don't know. I mean, one of the things I think of coming off of a race that was a well-run, hard-fought race is to just be able to take a breath for a second. And that kind of is really nice because it rolls right into the holiday season. So a little bit of time, downtime, family time. And come January, I'm looking for my next thing. And I don't know what it is, but I do know that it will be in the continuance of wanting to serve, because that's always been what I've wanted to do. And so I'm hoping that I can find ways to continue to talk about the opioid crisis and the overdose crisis and substance use disorder, but also to find other meaningful ways to be of use to my community. And I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I am too. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do next. We certainly need to always have your voice available, because you've spent a lot of time learning about issues that are very important to Tennesseans, and we have some big things I think that we can do. We Tennesseans, we agree on a lot. We agree, for example, that we don't want our little kids to go to school and get shot. And I think most Tennesseans agree on some sensible, reasonable gun legislation. And most Tennesseans agree that a woman should have some say-so about her own body, and that if she needs, health care and she finds herself pregnant and has issues, that she and her doctor should be able to make a decision. And so there are things that we agree on, and I would love for us to, as Democrats, find a way to express that, also making sure that our core values are always at the forefront, our core values, as Democrats. So I think there's some hope there for us. I mean, obviously, after the election, it took a moment, for all of us, I think, to get our feet back under, and now it's going to be a circus for a little while until some things settle down. But then we can just dig back in and do what we've got to do. Well, I love the book, and I want my viewers to know, even if you're not that interested in politics, it's the story of a woman who lives a life so similar to many of us. There are really super great highs, and there are some really super great lows. There's some wonderful decisions made, and there's some bad decisions made. There's also some men who do some really crappy things as she's on her journey, and most of us women have lived through that. And so it's a book that really brought out a lot of emotions for me. I was cheering you on. I was sad about many parts of it, and I ended it hopeful, which I think was one of the intents for people. So to my listeners, what you do next is order this book. Megan, if people want to keep up with you on social media, where would they do that?
I've got Instagram, website. So if you go to meganberry.com, you can find more information about the book. You can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Facebook. You can follow me on Blue Sky. I'm still over there on that Twitter thing, but I haven't posted because it's like a dumpster fire. So join me over there on Blue Sky because I'm over there now. It's Mayor Megan Berry.
Mayor Megan Berry. I like Blue Sky myself. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out to be with us today.
Asking me.
I hope you all.
Really-
I'm trying to still do. It's hard though. I think we all have to admit that, as you said, stepping back a minute during the holiday season is going to be good for all of us. We sort of need to figure out as progressives where we go and how we move about in the world and certainly in the state of Tennessee. I appreciate you taking time out, and I hope that you all have a wonderful holiday season. You and Bruce and your two dogs. Let's see, their names are, I forget.
And Natasha, who are both sleeping right here on my couch.
Winslow and Natasha. Well, thank you so much, Megan, and I'll see you soon.